Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Japanese Shabaru podcast. So we're gonna kick things off with Sakamoto Days as it's making its grand return for the summer season, and I do like that the episode starts off with a small recap, letting us know where the last season left off of, giving us some of the key points as we head into this one, and just really letting us know that we're gonna start off dealing with the uh, escapees from last season, and yeah, they seem like a really big threat. Like at least compared to like anybody that's not at Sakamoto's level or higher during this point portion. Uh, so for Shin, Hesuke, and probably Lu, they're definitely gonna be kind of struggling with them. But yeah, one of them is pretty much likes to tear people apart. One of them likes the thrill of the hunt. One of them likes to smash people into tiny little burgers. And another person just really likes to not necessarily play, but like hug somebody to the point where they activate some spikes. So like they end up killing them and they get excited too quickly. Uh, so really interesting for prisoners that we're gonna have to take down. And I do think that this season seems to have, at least for this first episode, seems to have a step up in animation quality. So big ups to Sakamoto and to TMS for finally getting a bit better during on the earlier portions of Sakamoto. So good stuff. The the opening though, really really good. I really enjoyed the opening. It's fantastic visually, this musically. It just meshes so well, and definitely another step up from the first season. So we have once again the crew having to get info on who the escapees are. So like they go and revisit the VHS store, which at this point is just like robbery. I mean, every time they go, it's like a million something yen that Sakamoto has to like cough up right away. So I don't know what kind of like retirement money he had from his assassin's days, but it is quickly drying up. And as they get into seeing it, and then they all Sakamoto falls asleep, and then the other freaking Lou doesn't really understand, and Shin is like the only one that's somewhat attentive towards it and somewhat like knows what's happening. So at least he got to enjoy something out of it. And then we head off with the Order members, which finally we get to see like all the Order members all in one place. Osaragi's driving. Nagumo's like pestering everybody. Takamura is just kind of being there, being all intimidating, and Shishiba is just there trying to make sure Osaragi stays focused on just driving. And at one point, she misses her turn, and it's just cute seeing how she just decides to hit the reverse in the middle of the highway and just no care in the world. Just it just goes to show like how fearless they are and how little they care about the actual rules of society. And then we have like the most insane shit happen with Takamura, which apparently a fly has such bloodlust that he activated and decided to just like slice the entire top off their car in order to get this fly. So, but one of the more interesting parts about Takamura unleashing like that is that this is the first time we actually see all the order members kind of be like afraid of one thing. So Takamura already seems like he's gonna be badass. And I mean he's an old man in an anime, so like they always make sure that the old man kicks ass. So I'm sure like once he goes full out, we're gonna see a real menace in the anime. And And then afterwards we hit back with the boys, the squad. Hesuke's training with Sakamoto. Hesuke's practicing his ricochet. Sakamoto's practicing moving or like being able to. He's trying to like really get back to his former peak self. So it's interesting training. They are kind of damaging a bit of the store, like the surroundings, but at the end of the day, like they have to stay alert, stay trained because the inmates are coming for them. So they have to be the ones that are ready if they get jumped on. So and in order to do that, they need like all the squad there. So Nagumo kind of shows up disguised as Shin, but Sakamoto instantly knew it was Nagumo. As we know, uh, Sakamoto is aware when Shin's around because whenever Shin's around, he always pictures doing something to Shin that would like kill him. So Shin would react to that like, "Hey, don't freaking think of killing me in that way." And because there was no reaction probably to one of Sakamoto's thoughts, he instantly knew it was Nagumo. But really, really great seeing like Nagumo do this, his Master of Disguise plays. I and it it's seemingly if it wasn't because Shin has his Esper abilities, it might have taken longer for Sakamoto to really notice that it wasn't Shin. And of course, afterwards, Nagumo kind of just lets Sakamoto know that he is on the list and his rank is below his, of course, because Nagumo always has to get the better laugh, always likes to mess around with Sakamoto. He's always the jokester. So now Sakamoto is there, training and doing all this other stuff. It's like perfect opportunity for Nagumo to bug him and to be a thorn in his side any way he can. And one of this is through the rankings. Obviously, Sakamoto, having being now retired, they're not gonna put him like S rank, so he's B rank right now. As they're not quite sure because he looks fat probably, but it's definitely because they don't really know that he can switch into his skinny version with enough like training or with enough burning of calories. And then we get the other boy, and the other side characters, Shin and Lu, who are at a store trying to get supplies, and Shin's over there like, listen, I need to get some supplies, so we're not gonna stay here too long. And one of the reasons they were there is because all of Hesuke and Sakamoto's trainees have left like holes in their walls, so like Shin's there to grab stuff to repair them, and Lou is there. She's kind of playing with cats, and then the store kind of convinces Shin with a puppy, and he starts playing with the puppy, and then they meet the first inmate kind of shows up and just swings an axe at Shin, which luckily for Shin he found a crowbar nearby, otherwise he would have been sliced in half. But yeah, this was like kind of crazy because right off the bat you could already see that Shin was kind of like below this guy. Like it seemed like he was not gonna have a good time fighting him, and definitely didn't seem like he could beat him. Even the guy said he couldn't beat him because once he figured out how Shin's power works and how his telepathy works, he just kind of was like, oh well. He just started thinking like he just starts thinking that he wants to end Shin instead of thinking how he's gonna do it. So like instead of thinking of his moves, he's just thinking of like the action of doing it, and that's enough to like get Shin's power to like stop working as properly, and then he's able to really get the upper hand on Shin. But because Shin was put in such a disadvantage position, and he kept getting mocked by that he's gonna go in after Sakamoto and his family, Shin ended up having like the power boost. Like his psychic abilities developed in a way that probably he wouldn't have been able to prior to this. And even Sakamoto was saying that some of the things like before that the only thing really holding back Shin is that he doesn't have many life or death experiences. So now that Shin has this on his back, and because of his power just developed higher, where he can actually predict a few seconds into the future, it just makes Shin's moves just so much more effective. He's able to see things before they come, and be able to act before the other person can even act himself. So Shin does thank him, like, yeah, thank you, because of you, my powers, I was able to develop my psychic powers in a way that I normally wouldn't have been able to. And yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. It was a nice episode back. Definitely, definitely highly recommend rechecking out Sakamoto Days. And for me, this is a 9 out of 10 episode. Gachiakuta episode 2. So, taking off with a bit of a flashback with Rudo and how he sees how the sphere people are treating everything, and how he feels a bit concerned that nobody has really put any value into people or things, and instead just throws him out in the pit. And he wonders, and he actually questions a bit, like, how this world works, and how he feels like, um, do we know what happens to everybody and anything that goes down in the pit? And it's really interesting, like, because unlike the rest of the people, Rudo actually has some questions, and he is really just like the black sheep of the community, both from the people that are rich in the sphere and the other folks that are not. And as it starts panning out, you see Rudo's eye, and it just looks like menace, like kind of like, not menacing, but it looks kind of crazy, like something's turning in Rudo's eye. And we have Rudo being attacked by the trash beast. So he's just, it's just really, Rudo's having a hard time, like, in this pit. Just, he's realizing that the air quality is so bad, like, he feels like his lungs are about to burst, and meanwhile he's being chased by these trash beasts that he has no idea how to actually defeat or what their purpose is. So there's a lot of things going on that Rudo's not quite aware of yet, but at the same time, he does realize at one point that if that he needs to not die here. So he makes a vow to himself, like, I'm gonna start. I can't die yet. I have to start and get revenge for what happened to me and what happened to Recto. I have to live on, and I have to avenge and and beat the guy that put to justice the guy that ended Recto. So we start seeing how his gloves just start emitting some sort of like frequency or like some rays, and his eyes started getting crazy. And as soon as he's able to like um get away from his funk that he was having, right, he starts seeing like objects that are starting to glow. And so I'm starting to wonder if Rudo, when he starts going crazy, if he starts to see like life within objects, or if that's just something he knows instinctively. But he does grab a lot of the objects that have light to them, so he obviously knows to go for them. And while he's using these objects, he is putting up a better fight to the trash beast, to the point where, like, even now, like, it seems like every time the gloves pick up something, they glow. So like the gloves are themselves are straightening whatever object Rudo picks up. He picks up this like side piece, and he's able to slice the trash beast. But unlucky for Rudo, the trash beasts are not letting up, and the air quality starts to get to him, and he starts kind of dipping in consciousness a bit. And luckily, though, Engine shows up. This guy with an umbrella shows up, who's Engine later on, and he tries to get Rudo to not be too loud, because the trash beast can kind of detect sound, and kind of go towards wherever sound is. So, but because Rudo kept asking and asking questions to Engine eventually shouted, and the trash beast arrived. And we see Engine does give Rudo a mask, so he is able to breathe a lot easier. He doesn't have to worry about like his lung collapsing now, or his lung giving out now. And this was really well animated. How Engine's able to use some sort of power to turn his umbrella into an actual weapon to fight these many like trash beasts. And I do love how his combat has to do with him flying in an umbrella and smashing down on beasts. It kind of reminds me, at least when he's floating, it kind of reminds me a bit of like Princess Peach from Mario. And yeah, no, like easily Engine just like takes care of the trash beasts, and then Rudo kind of is like, okay, well, boom, passes out, and then Engine's kind of dragging him along, and Rudo is like still has a lot of questions. He wants a lot of answers, and he does get on Engine's nerves. So Engine decides, okay, well, he answers him like one thing, which is that it's impossible for him to go back to the sphere, which is what Rudo wants. And one of the reasons that we get is this is really good world building in general for Gachiakuta, is that the sphere is always moving. Meanwhile, the people that are down are not. So as this sphere moves around, and it's so high up, which makes it unlikely that they're able to go up there as well. It makes it really hard to pinpoint exactly where the sphere is going to be, and that is the biggest hurdle for Rudo right now, figuring out where the sphere is going to be located. And of course, like, how is he going to go back up there is the other one. I do love though that we do have like this mini flashback right before, where Rudo is, you really see Rudo's character and how he handles being bullied by other kids and being ostracized by other kids, and in that he allows himself to get hurt, he allows himself to get bullied. And when Recto asks him like, did you punch him, or did you hit him, did you do anything back to him, and he's like, no. But he does he does tell him that he wishes that people would care about objects, and they go into the whole thing about how like if you give enough love to an object, it'll eventually inhabit a soul, which turns out it is definitely how the power up to Engine works. I'm pretty sure Engine has had Umbrella for a while and has given it enough love and care that now the soul that inhabits this umbrella is what allowed him to power it up and be able to defeat Trash Beast with it. And yeah, so Engine drops off Rudo to this random place where like people are like, "Oh, are you from the sphere?" And Rudo, being the good kid that he is, the honest kid that he is like, "Yeah, I'm a sphere." And then they call him a spherite, and then they tie him up in the truck. And this is where we really get where like the naivety kind of like backfires a bit in Rudo, because he wants to know so much about this world that he doesn't realize that the people that are here in the pit, or as they call it, the ground, actually hate people from the sphere. Because the reason why everything in the ground is so bad and it's so toxic and it's run by trash based is because the spherites, or the people from the sphere, actually dump all their trash in there, and then as they keep dumping more and more trash, it eventually starts getting more and more toxic, which allows trash beasts to actually become what they are. And my theory to that is that because the trash beasts were once objects that were or various objects that once had a lot of care to them and then were dumped after they got too old or too filthy, that the soul that inhabit them became negative and it eventually piled up to become the trash beast that it is. Um, but yeah, they start mocking Rudo about him being a spherite and how like he probably had the best of food over there, and that he probably won't last a minute there, and they start feeding him food and that's from the ground. It's like, oh, you probably think this is disgusting. Just look at you. I loathe you. I can't even stand to look at you, but you are gonna fetch us a good price. So that's another thing. A lot of, even when people dump spherite people here, those have certain values because we know that every part of the spherite person can sell well in the market that's in the ground. So imagine catching one that's alive, hardly unheard of, which that's another thing. We have to figure out how Rudo was able to live the fall. Still unexplained. It could be something to do with the whatever Rudo saw as he was falling down, or it could just be that he got lucky enough and didn't die from the fall. One of those two things has to kind of pay off. But because he's alive, he's gonna fetch a good price for these kidnappers or these human traffickers. And Engine just kind of on the side, just looking on. And Rudo, after the guy tries to shove food down his mouth, Rudo actually bites off the guy's finger, which is crazy. I had forgotten completely how unhinged Rudo is at times, especially early on. And yeah, Rudo was like, yeah, I'm a spherite, but like, who cares about that? All these labels that you keep trying to put on me, I hate them. I hate you. I hate the people up there, and I'm not dying until I get my revenge on the people up there. And he's like, even this food that you're giving me, it has value. Just like Recto told him, like, everything has value. Even the towels he uses to wash them, even the seats you sit on, everything has value if you give it value. So Rudo got some strength back by eating the disgusting food that they provided him. And then his power kind of kicked in, and he was able to use the chains that they had him chained in as part of like his weapon, kind of like how Engine was able to use his umbrella. These chains turned into weapon now that he could use. But unlike Engine, once Rudo started like going after other objects and turning them also into weapons, Engine kind of was like in shock, and everybody was also kind of in shock, like, whoa, you can do that to more than one weapon. So in this world, it is an anomaly that someone can have more than one weapon and give it a soul. And I do like that Engine does show up in time for Rudo not to, end up killing these people that were trying to make money out of him. And he kind of stops him, and it's like, all right, well, listen, you're pretty strong. I'm sorry I left you here all alone. I just needed to make sure that you were not that you were worth me keeping around. And it's like, but you were quite strong, so like, I would like to invite you to the janitors. It's like, I'll even give you like all the info that I possibly can from this world, or any other questions you have. And he's like, he starts telling them like how the people that can give soul to an object are known as givers, and he is one of the few that is able to do that. So it's a rare anomaly to have a giver, and it's even rarer for them to have more than one object that they're able to give soul to. So Rudo is looking kind of like busted early on, but also like there's obviously gonna probably be some limitations later on to his power. But yeah, becoming a janitor is the best way for Rudo to find out about this world. But yeah, no, this was really well adapted, so much better than the last episode. I think if you watch episode 1 and episode 2 back to back, it is a much better experience. So I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. Health Teacher, episode 3. We got such a nice episode for this one. It's really ominous, right off the bat. Like there's this kid that's just staring out the window, and all the kids look at him, or like they look back as he stays in school late at night and starts cleaning around. So rumors just kind of like spread all over that the school is haunted and whatnot. So on the next day, when Nube shows up, he tries to get in court Miss Ritsuko, but like his attempts are always failing because he's always talking about exorcism and all this like ghoul stuff. So like she is not with that. So he instantly gets rejected. No risk for Mr. Nube, but yeah. So then the students start talking about how like this school probably has some spirit, and because Mr. Nube is an exorcist, he probably can like get rid of it, and they want him to try to check it out, but he's like, nah, you guys don't worry about that. It'll just take care of itself, or don't do anything foolish by trying to come back to school late at night to try to prove that it exists, which they do end up going. It's kind of like their own like test of courage. They go in there, but not realizing that what they're really getting themselves into, because the teacher noticed right off the bat, like once they said something similar to that, he had an idea of like what was happening. So he grabbed his students and was like, listen, whatever you do, don't try to intimidate it, don't get it scared, don't do anything to upset this creature. Because when they go, it's literally just one of the science dolls that has, it looks just like one of the science dolls. And Mr. Nube kind of like pointed out that he kind of felt something when they brought it out in the teacher room, but he didn't know it had gotten to such extreme. So I like that they kind of try to give this doll like the essence of being in school and know-how of like what they're being taught there, to make it seem more like they're trying to ease it into it, knowing that it's not a human, but that it's actually a doll. So, but at some point they start doing this whole like thing about, the teacher explains about how dolls can have spirits inhabit it, and sometimes when those spirits start too long, or they stay there too long, they start feeling like they're actually human, or they start wanting to become actually human, and which is exactly what was happening to this doll. And as I tried to learn to be more human, it just kept reassuring itself that it was more human, but now it's getting its entire world completely like crushed, as they eventually try to ease it into letting it know that it's actually a doll and not a human. But it doesn't really buy into it until it sees its reflection in its rooms, in the bathroom. So I think this is such a great showing of how you humanify an object, right? Personify. It's really telling of like what's it does pose a really good question about like what makes a true human, right? So like when we think of humanity, we think of like emotional, we think of thinking, and this doll exhibit both those things, except obviously it wasn't as knowledgeable as some of the students there, but it is technically like you could consider it to have human like quality. So like really interesting stuff that they delve into in this one. And then they do something, the students do something stupid, which is like they try to accept it as one of their friends. And earlier in the episode, when this doll was watching the other students just kind of like go along with the day, he knows that we're calling each other besties, twins, all words that they can associate with like the closeness of having a friend. And in doing so, because he's not so fully developed as humans, it instantly thought like, well, if I'm gonna be twins or besties with somebody, we obviously have to look alike. So it kind of twisted its own perception of what a friend is based on its prior knowledge, and it wanted to carve out uh, the skin of the other students that were there so that they could be true friends, like in his own essence, because obviously friendship is not you all look alike, but to him it meant that you had to look alike to become friends. So that's what I tried to do, which this hiding game seek that they started playing was brutal. Like it was so scary, and what made it like have a sense of dire was that the teacher was in a closet. It got stuck in the cleaning closet that this doll used to use and to put away everything. So the teacher was not there. The students were hiding for their life. Uh, at one point, he he found Hiroshi and Kyoko, and he was about to stab him, but the teacher kind of like stopped it at the last minute with his demon hand, and then used his own demon hand to put this uh, the spirit of this doll back into it. As when it thought it was a human, its spirit kind of separated from the doll body and started mimicking humans, but now it's basically back into its own body. And it's like one of the things that I found interesting once it was back is that they put it in this kind of like shrine, and then they had to put an offering, which was like a notebook, and it didn't quite work. I don't know if it well, it wasn't because the offering was weak. It was more so because now we're getting to see the full effects or like partial effects of this area having such a spiritual magnetic field, high spiritual magnetic field, so that it's affected the whole offering, and it actually brought this doll alive, which we find out later in the episode that it's basically parading as a human now in the outside, but it says it's not like fully ready to be like full on human until it like regrows its skin, which really interesting. It seems like it's actually like the skin is actually growing on them, so like now the skin is repairing itself and it's becoming more and more human. But at least with this part, it wasn't really that he was a human. It was that he was becoming half yokai now, which is really interesting. It means since it got away, we're probably gonna end up seeing this this creature come back at some point, which I'm gonna find really interesting. But this episode was great. The animation was good. I think the music set a pretty creepy tone throughout the episode, which made it that much scarier when the doll started going after all the students. And I feel really bad for Mr. Nube, as he's about to all the damages incurred from this little excursion are gonna be deducted or sent to him in his next billing cycle, which we find out we already know he's pretty poor, living off bean sprouts for like an entire month. But no, I'm so happy with this episode. It's a 8 out of 10 for me. Health Teacher episode 4. So episode starts off once again with Sensei trying to get a date with Miss Ritsuko, and at first it's going well because he is doing the charming thing. He's asking her out. He's saying, we'll have dinner. It'll have a nice view," and then it goes completely the left field where he tells her, yes, it has a nice view to a cemetery. These guys come in dressed up as like ghouls and all this other stuff. So it's like all the things she hates. He just told her, yes, our date is gonna involve that once again, and she freaks out once again and leaves him there. Poor guy can't catch a break. And his students were like on him, like, "Oh man, you almost had that. If only you actually knew what you were doing." Like kicking him while he was down. It was really bad. And eventually they were like, "Oh, you would think somebody with like psychic powers would be a lot better at getting dates with other people, and one of the students that he's close with, Mickey, was the one that was like, "Yeah, if I had psychic powers, I would probably be famous. I'll be all this and that." And the teacher kind of looked like, "Yeah, don't, don't do that." Almost like it's one of those instances where like they don't know what kind of responsibility comes with like gaining psychic powers. They don't even know if like if they do earn psychic powers, whether it'll be useful to them or more of a hindrance to them. As when new people come in contact with things they're not fully aware of how to use, they either misuse it or they completely injure themselves or are incapable of like putting it to its best use. So I like that. That's kind of like one of the core themes of this episode, were about like misusing powers and stuff. And I want to, as things the day carries on, the episode carries on, like Miki just continues to be obsessed with like psychic abilities, psychic powers. So she starts really diving deep into the rabbit hole that is psychic powers, to the point where she's neglecting her other duties as a student, as a daughter, like fully focused on that, zeroing in on how to acquire psychic powers. And then eventually, one night, she ends up getting certain ability because she went to sleep, and once again, the spiritual magnetic field that is kind of going haywire kind of puts puts her in the ability to be able to use her own spirit later on. As we see, her own spirit kind of like goes away from her body, but it's only like her neck and her head can float around, and it's not really her actual body, because she starts being able to look around. As when the next day when she goes to the nurse's office after Nubia catches her trying to catch a snooze in class, she goes to bed in the nurse's office and starts going around the school. She's thinking she's flying. She doesn't really understand what she's doing, and she's probably like, "Man, this is probably just a dream." So she goes to the teacher room and finds the answers to the math test that she loathes so much, and she's like, "Man, I can't believe these were the answers just laying around right here." And then Miss Ritsuko shows up, and it's like she starts trying to play with her, wrapping her neck all around her, and it's like Ritsuko's not having that. She let out a scream, and then she woke up. And as Miki goes to take the test afterwards, she realizes, oh, these are the exact same questions that I saw in my dream. So she believes she has clairvoyance powers, which she doesn't. They called her some like creature yokai that does this stuff, and yeah, like she goes around later that day or that night, and she starts kind of scaring her other friends, her student friends. And when she comes to school the next day, it's like, listen, you're the one that's been like causing all this scare, all of us to get scared. And they kind of like ostracize her for a bit, like they kind of treat her as not human, as something to be feared with, and as a yokai essentially. And she cannot handle that, the fact that her friends, people she was close to, would consider her that, as she feels herself be human, which was really interesting. The previous episode was all about like acquiring humanity, and now in this one it exploits it again in like a way of like somebody is losing their humanity and is being labeled a monster instead. So really good way to pair up episodes. And as she runs away, she gets back into a sleep and starts cornering, and Nube starts cornering her with his demon hand, which she does not want to feel, because she feels that if she gets hit by the demon hand, she'll cease to exist. And Nube was just trying to make sure she didn't hurt anybody, and as more and more she gets cornered, like she starts getting more aggressive, to the point where she starts really believing that she is a yokai. She even like tells everybody like, yes, you know what, I probably am a Joker, but if I am a Joker, I'm not going down without fighting. Which Nube just kind of takes care, handles it, and eventually the friends are like, no, you know what, we accept you for who you are. Like, if you're gonna start having a long neck, we'll accept you for what you are, and not what label we've placed on you, or what label is left on you. And it's just so heartwarming seeing her friends at the end of the day really are her friends. They accepted her for who she was. They kind of want to help her be accepted by everybody. They want her to feel safe and comfortable with them, feel vulnerable with them, and it was just great. uh, they gave her back the humanity she felt like she was losing while maintaining this form. And Nui just kind of told her like, relax, I'm just gonna put put your spirit back in your body, and that should fix everything. And yeah, no, it definitely feels really interesting, and really want to dive more deep into this spirit magnetic field that is kind of plaguing this place. And it just seems like there's a lot of it feels very episodic, but it feels like it's all gonna be adding up to a certain point where we're gonna really dive deep into what's causing all this spiritual energy to get out of whack. And I cannot wait for that. And yeah, this episode was good. I think I'm rating it a 7 out of 10. Clevatess, episode 3. We have continuing where the last cliffhanger left off, with Alicia down in the bottom of the cliff, and she comes back to life essentially, but not fully the way she thought she would. I think she was expecting her to like come back and be reassembled right away, but instead she realized, oh well, I can't feel anything below my neck. So she has she's still like pretty much alive, but not fully capable of moving on her own. And yeah, she realized soon after that the little thing that is keeping her alive decided to come out, and was like, well, now I'm gonna have to set some ground rules, or like I have to I have to remind you of how things work here. I am the ego that Clevatess has put on her, is the whole reason why she's still alive. But that doesn't mean she will constantly just regenerate all the time. It pretty much is, however, Clevatess decides that she is worth keeping around. So, and also depending on how much blood she loses and stuff. Um, but in here she made it out safely, but they she pretty much has to now be at the beck and call of like, okay, well, I have to constantly show my worth so that I actually get to stay alive, and I don't actually have to part ways, and die. So it is really kind of dark, where it's like, yes, you are being kept alive, but you really don't have any free will of your own. You have to do what Clevatess says. You have to continue to prove yourself at every beck and corner that you are worth keeping around. And that's just like not any way to like that you can really say she is alive, in a sense, when her own will is not really put into play. But regardless of that, Clevatess gives her the perfect opportunity to show her worth. And because he asks her like, okay, why did the nail reject me so eagerly, or so without really giving it a second thought. And Alicia was like, okay, well, you are a slave and you have a baby right now. Essentially, it's like she probably did not feel safe to be able to go on the run with you. And also, there's the whole thing with the bandits. As long as they're still around, they'll keep hunting you and hunting her down forever. So there, to her, it really wasn't much of a escape to leave this place and go into the unknown where she would eventually meet her own end. So Clevatess, being the smart dark beast ruler that he is, decides, okay, well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get rid of the bandits, and by we I mean you. So it's like, I'll heal you from all your broken bones and all the stuff that happened to you, but you have to get rid of them, because nobody will bat an eye if a hero goes and kills all these bandits. And it would also keep them covered and away from the spotlight as well. So pretty clever on Clevatess' part, or Clan's part, and now Alicia was reluctant, and she was like, "Well, I guess I have no choice." And it, the animation and the amount of sounds that they had to use for letting us see her being pieced together bone by bone, or like making it, or like getting that feeling that she was getting pieced bone by bone by animation and sound quality, was stellar, amazing. I loved it. Uh, but yeah, she's gonna prove her worth by getting rid of these bandits now. And Nell, we switch over to Nell, the poor soul Nell. She goes back, and Carmen is like, you should have just let him finish it off, and before they got the chance to hit you, and it's like, yeah, well, that is what happened. And Nell comes back a bit more optimistic than she was prior, and now that she was given the carrot dangling in front of her about going out in the outside world, she kind of now wonders, okay, what's that like? And because Carmen is not from the Ravens, she actually came from outside of them. She asks her what it's like, and then she blurts out about Plan and how he wanted her to come along with him. And Carmen's like, well, you need to not have that in your mind. You are here. You have some worth here, and plus, if you can't even go with him because you'll be hunted down. And it's like, and plus, the use. This man will probably only use you till you are of no use to him, and then he'll toss you away like all the other men do. It's like, in this world, Carmen kind of lets it out for her. Like, in this world, we really are not, women are not really worth anything. The only worth they have is whatever worth the man gives them, and if it's not for that, they're thrown aside and never to be seen or never to be heard from again, essentially. And unlucky for Nell that the boss Broco was walking along the dining hall as they were talking about all this outside stuff, and he decides to get Nell to follow him to kind of help him out with an experiment of sorts. And this just means that Carmen was like, yeah, well, shoot, now we don't got anybody to feed the babies, because apparently when Broco goes to get you to help him out, you never come back to life. So Clint kind of shows up and it's also like, what do you mean? And then I guess Carmen lets it out like, yeah, like people that go with them don't ever come back. It's not even a. That's why she's considered like already non-existent. And yeah, so we follow Neil and Broco along their path, and turns out he lured her into his dark beast playing room, and is gonna make like a sport of it for his own entertainment. And it's like, okay, well, we get all this info though about Arcanite and how those red stones keep getting used for different things, like light and other, and for magic to control dark beasts and stuff. And it's really coming in handy. It's really showing how this world is slowly progressing due to these stones, and how they're becoming more essential to everyday life in this world. And then we have Nell get eaten by the Dark Beast, which Clan shows up and instantly, right before the beast eats her, she realized her mistake too late. Like, she realized she should have gone and taken his hand when she could, because at least in that way she would still be alive and at least have worth, because she knows she could provide and feed the Luna. But she sees then and cleansly tells Luna, like, listen, the Luna's the baby. This is a eat or be eaten world. Don't be don't cry because Nell it was Nell's time to get eaten. And this pretty much, he goes and tries to face off against Broko, and the Dark Beast kind of like gets scared because it knows what Clan is and knows that it's one of the four Dark Lord beasts, whatever. And yeah, it was interesting seeing how the Broko was trying to explain to Clan how magic works and what they use it for, and then instantly Clan realized, shoot, I should have had Alicia tell me how to tell me all about magic and how to avoid getting hit by it, or like avoid any confrontation with it. So now that Clan's having his own issues, we have Alicia who has her own issues with these bandits as she's slicing and dicing through them like nothing, and then eventually one of them uses pure force to destroy her sword, which makes her contemplate, okay, well, if I am truly gonna get rid of all these bandits, I'm gonna need a sword worthy of such feature, and also one that will last more than just a hit. Which then she decides to go after the sword in the lake full of dark beasts, and she goes about it in a smart way, because as she noticed that the dark beasts were coming out, uh, she kind of figured they gotten used to being fed in a regular basis. So then now, instead of like going out to get food, they waited for these bandits to start dropping uh, food for them to them. So she used that to her advantage, went up until they didn't realize how far up they were or how close they were to the sea, and that's pretty much where they did their trap, where she did her trap, where she got all of them down in the lake, so that as the sea beasts started eating and feasting off these bandits, first of all she's taking some bandits out, and then she's giving herself space to dive deep into the ocean and get the sword, which once again she's using her immortal body to her advantage, where she went down a barrel so that the beast wouldn't notice she was going down, and she's just gonna let herself suffocate and resuscitate over and over again until she manages to be where the sword is at, and then use it to probably defeat the a dark beast or two, and then to get rid of all the bandits. But I just think it's really interesting how for Alicia, she's becoming more human. Alicia's becoming more of a monster because she's immortal and constantly doing things that a monster would have no regard of doing. Like she's putting her own body at risk, like taking caution to the wind. And meanwhile, we have Clan who has to be a bit more cautious, and because in the form he's currently in, with the horn person, he he is more human than he is a dark beast. So I like how we have these two parallels of these two going in the complete opposite way, and then we have Luna, who's like the connecting glue, little baby. But no, yeah, this episode was so good, so amazing. I think I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10, and that's gonna be it for this episode. And so, if you like what you heard, you want to keep having my videos pop up in your feed, just like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the noti bell, and until next time, bye.